Oh, sorry, Carol. I'm in your way.
I say we just collect all the boots and destroy the island. Yeah. No. We can just nuke it, sink it.
Winston. Elaine. Your wife's in. Are you interested in any short tails?
I had some short hair.
Okay. You want to sit with that? Okay, no worries.
I know you got a lot.
I do. I'm trying to find homes for them. I just wanted to check because I probably won't have any at the next meeting. I take them to a store. You know. Yeah. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure. I was going to get your contact information if you wanted something. It depends what I have in my hand. If my Rickia is doing really good, that plant that floats on top, I'll just leave them in there and they'll be fine. Rickia and frogfin. All the floating plants, they're fine. Yeah, it all depends. The babies need a place to hide. So the more places you have for the babies to hide, the better your yield is going to be, your survival rate. That has a lot to do. Rickia is really good. It can be hard to find. I didn't bring any. If your water goes off, like if your nitrates get too high, Rickia is my first plant that'll melt water. So I kind of can judge my plant by that. No, if there's too much nitrate. And I can tend to get a lot of nitrates because they're in my breeding. So, in a 40-gallon breeder, I have probably 100 or more fish right now. Yeah. Lucky me. Yeah. So you probably need more places for them to hide. Look for hornwort. Usually there's hornwort here. Hornwort's really good. Anacaris, hit or miss. I think they like hornwort better. Oh, he brought hornwort. Yeah. 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 And that'll just float on top. And that'll give the baby something to hide.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, the speakers are way over there. Okay. Awesome. So we'll be starting the meeting a little bit later, in about 10 minutes today. And we still have some stragglers with some more time. So yeah, if you need to go to the bathroom, if you want to order pizza, take these 5 to 10 minutes. As most of you know, we'll also turn off the lights in the auction room. So if you want to look at all the plans, there is some plans on the donation table from the speaker, Jebriel. So he's up here too. So if you want to store some food plans, then you're very more welcome. Okay, so you have. I honestly feel a little sad because that's but we have a game. I'm excited too. I'm like you, like a young man. We're happy to have anything planned for.
My dad finally got a phone and a Motorola flip phone. He wants to have it in his pocket. And he has the hardest time. My dad, 84. I had to show him how to do a video call. Now he knows how to do a video well, I know, back in the Your phone is your credit card, your phone is your television, your radio, your audio book, your calculator, your address book, your calendar, your phone. Smartphones are more powerful than what they went to the moon. Think about that. We have more computing power now than they ever
Yeah. Good to see you.
What do you mean?
You're not reading angels anymore? I have to give up angels and throw them I really know enough. Sometimes has the power shut off. And I tried propane, but then my system fell out ahead of time. I don't have heaters in every single tank because I have too many to be checking. I need to grow. I have to do 45 liters and have to be checking that many small ones, and then out in the workshop room, it's not in the heated, I have to take like 55. So, 125 gallons of diesel. No, I have 10 gallons, don't have any, they're empty, and you use them, topped out. Just sit there waiting till I feel like I like the 15 gallon size, that's my favorite. Now, once in a bit, they're not heated at all, because sometimes they get a little cool, but they have rosy bars and gold bars, and bars can take the fluid temperature, not quite what goldfish can. So that when I wake up in the night and I'm bored, I look at my as I say, I keep them lighted at night, so I can use it as a night light if I want. And then it's off during the day. There's some what the time schedule is. That means I have to keep my bedroom door closed because the light shines into the hallway and it disturbs my daughter in the next bedroom. She won't close her door, I have to close mine. One daughter does, because we tell her fire. And before that, I had my sister living in my basement because of the grandma's fire. And now I have, she passed away. Now I have my daughter's friends live in my basement because of the couch fire. My other daughter lives about a mile away in her house. I don't really like that situation. If they're telling me they're going to move out, when they do, I'm going to get a whole bunch of large frames and put it in there so I can't put it out. Actually, I think
They may not know, they may not have enough data.
they saw it focus really good. And I put them in that one too when they moved out. But they keep telling me, well, that their problem is they're waiting for the person that's in the house to get another house.
Yeah,
And that's not something.
yeah.
There's no incentive to move on.
Yeah.
He just fell.
What I heard is that they pay $300
He drives up here
and the bathroom, their home, and they can use my laundry. They have a private exit.
So he tries to.
And they help, they pay them half of the electricity.
Try to do video calls.
No, they don't come up and use my kitchen. They have a microwave, a sun cooker, an electric fry pan, and outside they have a barbecue. But they do have a full-size refrigerator they got with them. So they have almost a kitchen. However, they have to come into the laundry room to wash the dishes. It wasn't meant as a living space.
He's
It's 2 bedrooms, me and my daughter use them upstairs. I wasn't intending to have people down. But when my sister needed someplace, we just cleared out things so she could come in there. She was happy enough in it. And, the trouble with these other people is they have so much stuff outside.
he loves them.
It's in my way.
Oh, you go.
I could probably put it in storage somewhere, but it's not in my storage. I'm not gonna pay $300 plus the utility. Yeah, that's electric. I was fine for 10 years after my husband passed away, just by myself. If we had to decide, someplace to go. And relatives, I don't trust my daughter, I don't trust my sister.
I enjoyed it as long, you know why? They didn't have to ask the kids where they wanted to go. They could eat any time they wanted to. They didn't have to sacrifice some of the free. My point of view, I love it.
Well, my sister had lost her mother's house, and it's not her.
I didn't have to
She couldn't stay there because there was no utilities. There's no town, there's nothing. So she had to move away until they got back there.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna take it with you? No. I'm trying to get my dad to realize that. He's invested a lot in real estate. He had no.
So you don't want to rent out, you just little bit of trouble.
I'm like, okay, great.
What is
Okay. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what to
That makes sense.
I don't know. I don't care.
you know, I've got so many plans. All the lawyers say,
This is what me and my husband do. We ride. But you probably never
Just like the plants.
They are pedal power, battery assisted, but they go off road.
But your kids are on yeah. I want to make sure my daughter knows no one ever don't want to have someone in the funeral. If you want to, they can have a barber right in the backyard. Go to my phone and find all my friends that are still
In
alive.
China, one man shop, not a big corporation. One man shop. He makes all kinds of bikes because they do
I really do not like funeral homes and the amount they charge.
In Hawaii.
Okay, everyone. You turn off the lights in the room, and then we'll hear from Luke for a second, and from our speaker.
Well, my husband was leaving.
Thank you, ladies, for your seats.
Thank you. That my grandson was put together. My son-in-law bought the hardware. My daughter got the lining. So it's son and family affair. Because we know from my relationship.
I used to ski until I hurt myself so bad they had to take me somewhere else.
We went to see where my father
And then my husband and stepdad.
we got a military spot up near Munich. We wanted to see where that was. And then when my mother died, it took about a year or so before we could get everybody together. They used the back road and knew that. And everything was in a box. And they didn't
I enjoy skiing.
we took a couple of pictures. I don't think we intend to go back. It was too far.
Oh, yeah.
I had one friend that after he died, his family had to how they renovated his house. He had the money to do it himself, but he didn't. So when he died, the family got it ready to sell. And the house sold for $100. And they got his ashes. And if we wanted to, we could get a top of it. I walked around trying to figure, where do I want to put it? He grew a lot of pistachio trees. And they're in the middle of one of them. Cedar tree. And I'm thinking, why did he leave that cedar tree? Yeah. I don't know if I'm right or not, but I read everybody for that cedar tree to be there. Okay. However, somebody in that family brought the
Bill,
we got sick. 4 of us got sick right after having that gift. I don't know who was sick, but 4 of us got sick
Hi,
at the same
everyone.
time.
For the first time, we are able to stand over here on the left side without feedback.
Nice, thank you.
It's great. Thanks for the layout change, guys. Welcome to the October meeting. Is there anyone here with us for the first time? Hi. So if you want to tell us where you're coming from and what you keep, and your name, name is helpful.
My name is Kyla. I actually drove down for Reno. My focus is spiny eels.
All right.
We're
Spiny.
Well, you're in the right place.
Well, yeah, welcome. Everyone here likes their own things. Everyone's friendly. Chat with any of us. I'm the president. My name is Luke. Nico's back here, vice president. Joey, treasurer. And no decimal, right? So then, working our way over, there's Jen on the board, and Joe, Matt, Aaron, Anissa, Jessica.
Dawn's not here, so
Okay, well, that's all we have here today. If you have any questions, if anyone has any questions, come see one of us. We're happy to help. Also, we weren't able to do this a couple months ago since he was absent, and then we forgot last time, but we have a plaque for lifetime membership for Mr. Ron Coleman.
I will need a picture.
So he's done a lot for our club and is actively here almost every month. Almost every month.
If he's not in the jungle somewhere. Yeah, if you're not out of the country doing other fun things.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And whenever he's gone, it's for a good cause. He's another great person to approach. If anyone has any questions, feel free to pester him. That's why we made him a lifetime member.
It's not class.
Am I missing any announcements?
Mega auction next month and it's Halloween, so dress up.
Elections.
Also, go to the
Right. Elections are next month. I've already been nominated, so there's no need to continue doing it. If anybody wants to take over, I welcome you. If you have anyone in mind, nominations are still open. Next month, we're going to have to take a few minutes to do voting. So there are write-ins, right? There are write-ins on the ballot.
Yeah.
So you can nominate someone up until the club meeting next month. If you have someone in mind, please, you can do it online. Talk to them first. Don't nominate someone without their knowledge. If you are on there and you do not want to see us, we can take your name off. Don't worry. You're not being conscripted into voluntary duty. Mega auction next month. Bring your stuff. 60 item limit. It shouldn't be Halloween because that'll be November. It'll be after Halloween.
It'll be Halloween.
It'll be after Halloween.
It's the day after.
And
It's Halloween.
Speaking of Halloween, we have Jebriel here today, and he's going to talk about booths. And some of the names of those booths remind me of some Halloween stuff. Regardless, I've known him for a couple of years now. We've had some talks going back and forth, talking about growing this or that, IDing this or that. Great guy, very knowledgeable. He's here to talk to us about Bucephanadra cultivation and why you should be trying to farm it instead of taking it off the island. Ow! Thanks so much.
The other way. It's kind of weird. Oh, this way. Yeah, it's kind of weird. see.
Can you guys hear me well? Yeah? Alrighty. Yeah, my name is Jebriel Houdroj. I come from Portland, Oregon, and I'm here to talk about cultivation over exploitation and the genus Bucephanadra. A glimpse of hope. So, all right. So in this presentation, we're going to be going over epiphyte versus real-fitting plants and the big misconception. Cultivating Bucephanadra and Anthocyanum. We'll get into that later. Cultivating Bucephanadra outside of the aquarium. Pollination and how hard it can be, or why not we pollinate them. And dissection and identification and exploitation and extinction. So keywords. You guys are probably familiar with some of these, but we're still going to go over them. An epiphyte is an organism that grows on the surface of another plant. They derive their nutrients from the moisture in the air. They're not actually taking the nutrients from the plant that they're growing on. The host plants, these plants that the plants are grown on, are known as chlorophytes. A real phyte is a plant that grows in a rheophytic condition. What is a rheophytic condition? That is going to be an area where the water is flowing and draining and receding very quickly, so a fast water flowing environment. An obligate rheophytic herb. These are the plant species that are exclusively found in fast flowing water areas. Anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are responsible for the purple, red, and blue pigments that we see in all the plants in nature, not just Bucephanadra. And endangered species, of course, these plants are threatened by deforestation, and within the foreseeable future, may become jeopardized. We'll go over these topics more in depth shortly. All right, the big misconception, epiphytic versus real-fitting. So a lot of the plants in the hobby are known as epiphytic, but this can be further from the truth. It's because these plants grow on rock and wood, like the traditional epiphytic plant. However, plants like Anubias, Bucephanadra, Java fern, and cryptocorn, they're formerly known as real-fitting plants because they grow in fast water-moving environments. All right, as I said before, an epiphyte is an organism that grows on the surface of another plant, and a rheophyte is a plant that lives in fast-moving water currents, an environment where few other organisms can survive. There are two types of rheophytic plants. It's been long debated what Bucephanadra is considered in the hobby. However, botanists who describe these plants describe them as obligate rheophytic herbs. So they are obligate rheophytes. It's a little cut off over here, but there's a little arrow that shows in the proper botanical description. Here, boys.
You want to get fixed?
Oh.
Try and fix it.
Yeah.
Joey,
Technical.
it's too zoomed out. Like I see on the screen, there's more, and I on the remote. Is it the F or? I don't know if you. I'll just wait for a second. Sorry.
Okay.
Should we just move the whole thing up a little bit? Can I ask you to move over there? Sorry. And then we'll just.
All right. Thank you. All right. So here we have. Okay. Here we have a description, botanical description of Bucephanadra itself, and as you can see here, they're known as obligate rheophytic herbs. So, Peter Boyce is one of the main, probably the only person pioneering the identification of Bucephanadra in the wild, and I believe there are about 32 to 36 accepted species in the trade. I think the species are known as their true scientific names. They don't have those weird trade names like brownie ghost or brownie red. They're truly identified species. Popular online retailers try to spread misinformation by calling these guys fluctuative rheophytes or even epiphytes, but that's not the case. And just because something is an obligate rheophyte doesn't mean it cannot live in an aquarium. And this right here is a good visualization of Bucephanadra micrantha. It's a smaller variety of Bucephanadra that has skinny, undulate leaves. Undulate meaning very wavy. All right, now we're going to be going over cultivating Bucephanadra in the aquarium. There's a few misconceptions on this. So, growing Bucephanadra aquatically. We're going to be going over plant husbandry and planting in the aquarium, water parameters, and do they really matter? Because, you know, this is a hardy, beginner-friendly plant. And some of my specimens, of course. So here are some that I've grown out here. This one right here, we actually have an auction right now. It's a donation. It's called Bucephanadra Red Serenade. It has very beautiful mid-ridges and prominent veins. So it's not like your basic Bucephanadra species. All right, plant husbandry and planting in the aquarium. The most important thing in the planted aquarium is going to be stability. So if your water changes are erratic and your fertilization dosing is erratic, you are going to have slower growth, and some plants are just not going to respond. Something that's really important is doing a weekly of 50 to 65% water change, especially if it's a densely planted aquarium. Plants like cleaner water than fish. So even if your nitrates are reading 0, well, you don't want your nitrates to read 0, but even if you have really low nitrates, you still want to be performing those water exchanges. A nice hack that I like to use is attaching a turkey baster to the end of your siphon with rubber bands, and then you're able to blow the debris around in the tank while you're actually siphoning the water out. So a lot of the times, detritus and deteriorated plant matter can build up in the cracks and the crevices of the plants in your tank, and in the corners, and it's real hard to siphon those areas out. But if you use a turkey baster, you attach it to your siphon, you're able to push all that debris out as you're sucking the water out. And of course, you do not want to siphon the substrate too deep. The reason being is there could be a lot of anaerobic bacteria that's down there. And if you siphon the substrate too deep, you can release that into the water column, and that could harm your fish, especially the more sensitive guys. All right, now we're going to be going over prepping Bucephanadra for cultivation. Getting it right from the start promotes consistency and prevents complications later. Here are some important foundational procedures. And of course, this isn't the only way you can do things as well. So we're going to be going over different cleaning materials you'll need. You don't really need them all, but it's what I like to use. We have the aquarium shears or razor blade, a soft bristle toothbrush, this will come in handy later, a spray bottle to keep the plants moist while prepping. So a lot of the times when people take their plants out of their tank, when they're doing a water change, whether it be trimming or moving plants around, they put their plants in a basin of water or a 5-gallon bucket. This is not ideal because there's no water circulation or movement in the water, and that can actually start the deterioration process a lot faster on the plants. So it's ideal to take your plants and put them on a washcloth or a paper towel or something where you can keep them sprayed and have access to the air. Optional, lead weights, stainless steel pins, stainless steel mesh, thread, and fishing line, sort of things you can use to fixate the boost onto. And then for disinfecting the plants, a 1 to 20 part bleach water ratio, you can use that for dipping the plants. After the dip, for about 2-3 minutes, you're going to want to rinse the plants, making sure there's no residue on them before putting them in the aquarium. All right, so next we're going to be going over some examples to look out for when you get some new Bucephanadra plants, whether it be tissue culture, whether it be potted or bare root. So you want to be looking out for different moss, decaying leaves, cyanobacteria or algae, but the main things you're looking for are going to be root rot and rhizome rot. So we have an example here of healthy and rotted roots. The healthy root you can see is going to be white, it's going to be thick, it's going to be nice and formed in comparison to an unhealthy root. And a rotted root is going to be brown, but not all the time are brown roots indication of rot. So a lot of the times Bucephanadra are taken from the wild and brought over to the States and from the aquarium. These wild Bucephanadra also exhibit brown roots, and that can be hard to distinguish between rotted roots and clean roots. So it's very easy to miss. Oftentimes wild Bucephanadra have brownish roots. To distinguish healthy versus rotted roots, you want to carefully rub your index finger and your thumb between the roots. And of course, the rotted roots are going to disintegrate, and you're going to be able to identify the rotted roots versus the healthy brown roots. You see here some moss that came in, any deteriorating yellow leaves. All these things are stuff that you want to remove from the plant before putting it into the aquarium or terrarium. All right, so plant preparation. We're going to go over the preparation of how you should ideally prep the plant for putting it in your tank. You want to remove the plant from the contents, whether it be potted, tissue culture, or bare root. Identifying the melting leaves, rotting rhizomes, or rotting roots. For melting leaves and roots, carefully use your hands to remove as much of the rot as you can. To get in between the crevices of the plant, this is one of the most important things with Bucephanadra. There's these things called the sheath, and the sheath is what comes out before the leaf is actually pushed out of the aquarium, pushed out of the rhizome. And that sheath can deteriorate a lot faster than different portions of the plant. And it's really hard to get that material out from the crevices and the cracks of the plant. So you can get a soft bristle toothbrush, and you're able to get through those crevices very easily, removing that deterioration. You'd be surprised how fast the plant will deteriorate if this is left on. If you find rhizome rot, you can use your blade to cut the affected rhizome. And you're not necessarily going to be cutting the plant in half to propagate it more, you're just going to be cutting off any of the rotting material, so anything that's brown and bushy. Then you plant as you wish. These plants can be grown attached to rock, wood, and they can be planted in a substrate. There's a big misconception that rhizomous plants cannot be grown in the substrate. That is furthest from the truth. If you're planting the roots all the way up to the rhizome, they can be buried in the substrate. Even some rhizomes can be buried as well, but you just don't want to bury them too deep, because then the rhizome can get suffocated and the plant will deteriorate. And yes, it's okay if you bury the rhizome. It will not suffer. Water parameters, and do they really matter? So Bucephanadra is a very versatile plant. It can be grown in a lot of different water parameters. They come in an array of different colors. And what causes this coloration is epidermal accumulations of cyanogen-based anthocyanins. So what does that mean? Epidermal accumulation, so that is the surface of the leaf. So these anthocyanins are produced at the surface of the leaf. And they're water soluble. So the water parameters of your aquarium are going to determine what color your Bucephanadra will portray in the aquarium. Not all Bucephanadra produce anthocyanins, of course. There's going to be completely green varieties. So the parameters in your tank don't necessarily matter to those things. And then cyanin is a type of anthocyanin which is water soluble, and it causes the beautiful coloration that we see in roots, especially like the brownie ghost variety. You can see it in a deep brown, deep purple coloration, or even sometimes a bright red or neon pink coloration. We'll get into what parameters changes what next. So, anthocyanin, general hardness, and TDS. TDS is going to be your total dissolved solids of the aquarium. So that's going to be everything that you cannot see. Not all Bucephanadra have the same ability to produce red and purple pigments. You can manipulate the color of your Bucephanadra by adjusting the hardness and temperature of your aquarium. For example, for deeper red or pink pigmentations, you have a more acidic aquarium. And acidic meaning, a GH of 5 to 6, a KH to 0.2, your pH under 7 ppm, and your TDS under 110 ppm. Yes?
How long does these parameters have to be in that for the used to show that? Is that like instantly or weeks or months?
That's a good question. So It depends on the plant state you get, whether it be tissue culture or bare root. A lot of the times the bare root plants are grown terrestrially, so they're not exhibiting the prominent coloration that you see in the aquarium. But if you, for example, get a piece of Bucephanadra that was farm grown outside of the water, you transition it and you put it into an aquarium that has these acidic parameters, within the first 2 to 3 weeks, you will see that new growth, and that new growth will be that bright red or purple or pink coloration. That is different though if you were to take a plant that was already grown in acidic water and transitioned it to a more alkaline water. If you were to do that, the plant will stress, it will lose its leaves, and it will take probably a month or two before it actually grows in the new parameters. So that's a really good question. Bucephanadra they can stress very easily if if the parameters of water is changed. So we'll get into that a bit later as well. And for a deeper purple or blue pigmentation, you're going to want more neutral or alkaline aquarium. So that's going to be a GH of 8 to 10, a KH of 2 to 5, and a pH of 7 to 7.8. TDS 180 and up. The higher your TDS is, the slower growing your plant will be. We'll talk about that one. Right, we'll just continue. So this genre of plant is known as a hardy or beginner-friendly plant. However, Bucephanadra is very sensitive to abrupt swings in water changes. So say you have a tank that has high amounts of nitrate in there, and you're growing your Bucephanadra in there readily, and you do big water changes back to back, and your nitrates get dropped down to like 0 to 5. That will stress your plant. They will lose its leaves, and it will take probably 2 to 3 weeks for it to reacclimate in the aquarium and actually start growing in the new water parameters. Sudden changes in your hardness is probably going to be the most prominent thing in Bucephanadra amounts. So if your tank goes from a very acidic condition to a very alkaline condition, your Bucephanadra plants will get stressed, they will lose their leaves, and it will take a while for them to actually start growing back. Yes?
What time frame are you talking about? Hours, days?
I would say days. Yeah. So if you were to, it depends. So if your Bucephanadra goes from acidic conditions to more alkaline conditions, it's going to be probably days. I mean, like 1 to 2 days probably. But if it's going from alkaline conditions to acidic conditions, I've seen it be more forgiving. So the rhizome should still be intact, and if your rhizome's intact, you of course can grow the plants, but it will take a while for them to adjust, probably a week to a month, depending on conditions.
No, about changing that condition.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, time frame.
Oh,
Rapid change, slow change.
it's a rapid change, yes.
How slow a change is acceptable?
Oh, I see what you're saying. How slow the change is acceptable? Well, if you have an alkaline tank and you're trying to make it more acidic, if it's within like a week and a half to 2 weeks of slowly lowering the hardness of the water, your plant will adjust a lot easier. However, you are still going to see some deterioration of the plant.
So water changes more frequent, small,
More frequently,
more frequent, small changes.
more frequent small changes if you are changing the hardness, yes. Yeah. Yes.
So you were saying that you would suggest 50 to 75% water changes
Yes.
anyway.
Yes.
But isn't that considered a large water change in the first place?
Yes, that is a large water change, yes. So the most important thing when you're doing a large water change like that is matching the hardness to your aquarium. So if your tank is already alkaline, it's harder, and you're doing a water change without buffering the water or without adding fertilization to the water, that can cause the plant to stress more. So I would say the most important thing when you're doing large water changes like that is making sure you're matching the hardness and the temperature to your aquarium. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just saying, you're saying it's kind of confusing, because you're saying that plants prefer large water
Yeah.
changes, but also at the same time, when you start adding nutrients, you're saying that a large water change is bad.
Well, that's it. That's if you're doing a larger water change and you're not matching the parameters of your aquarium, right? So if you're doing a large water change and you're not matching the parameters, that's going to either dilute or add more hardness to the tank, depending on if you're adding hardness or not. So that will cause, that will be stressful for not only Bucephanadra, but a lot of the plants in the tank, because they're already used to growing in the aquarium at the parameters you had them. So if you were to do that water change without remineralizing or matching it to your aquarium water, that's where you're going to see the most stress. Does that make sense? Okay. Of course. And then also, high levels of organic waste, of course, ammonia and uncycled aquarium is really detrimental to the care. Keeping a stabilized TDS will ensure steady growth as well. So that ties back into making sure you're remineralizing your water. Unless your tank is already adapted to acidic conditions, then doing a water change with acidic water will be all right. Bucephanadra can often get stuck in an acclimation phase. So if you're doing your weekly water changes and you're not remineralizing your water and you're not adding fertilization, they can go dormant from the amount of change they're going through. And that's where you're going to see them take a month and a half to actually start forming new leaves. All right, so here we have some submerged specimens. I'll go over a few of them. These are ones that I've grown at home. You can see here I have a Bucephanadra blue emerald. It's called blue emerald because it has dark blue and green coloration. And here we have one Bucephanadra deep purple. These are both grown in an alkaline aquarium. So the water was a lot harder. And you can see the exhibition of the darker blue coloration due to the anthocyanins responding to the hardness that's in the water. And then furthermore, you can see here we have the Bucephanadra red emerald and red serenade. They're pushing out bright pink emergence that harden off into a lighter coloration. That's going to be due to the more acidic aquarium. So it just goes to show how some of the Bucephanadra will react in your tank. Again, if they're just purely green Bucephanadra, the hardness, acidity does not matter. They will just grow. That being said, if there is abrupt changes in the aquarium with those green Bucephanadras, they will exhibit the same stress response that any other one would, if that makes sense. Oh, this one down here, this is a little variegated one. We all love variegated Bucephanadras. And then planted, this is a little photo of them planted in the aquarium. You can see how close I plant the rhizome to the substrate. This is all aqua soil right here. And they're all growing readily and beautifully, so I don't want you to be afraid to plant your plants in the substrate. And next, immersed cultivation. So immersed versus immersed, what's the difference? Foundational immersed cultivation versus soil bottom bins. We'll go into that shortly. So, naturally predisposed characteristics that Bucephanadra have. Immersed, that's going to mean standing out or rising above the surface, so any of the plants that are grown outside of the water. And immersed means it's immersed, submerged in the aquarium. Most of all the plants we grow in the aquarium are found grown immersed outside of the water, with a few exceptions like Vallisneria or Blixa. Those are going to be true aquatic plants where they send their flowers up to be pollinated outside of the water. Growing Bucephanadra immersed can be very versatile. We went about that earlier. However, the stomata. So Bucephanadra, they're known to be glittery. You look at them from the top down, you're going to see rainbow glitter coloration on them. That's not just aspect of the leaf, that is the stomata. And what the stomata does is it helps regulate the plant. It helps regulate the CO2 to create oxygen via photosynthesis. They open up when submerged to prevent the plant. When I say they open up, I mean the stomata opens up, so it makes the surface of the plant look like a galaxy. I don't know if you guys have seen the Bucephanadra grown. Submerged, you can see some beautiful white dots on them, and that is known as the stomata, which aids in photosynthesis. They open up to prevent the plant from drowning. So you can take a Bucephanadra that was grown outside of the water. You're not really going to see those stomata opened up because it was grown terrestrially out of the water. But as soon as you put it in the water, within a couple of weeks, you'll start to see those stomata open up, even on those immersed leaves in the aquarium, and you'll start seeing more glittery pattern on them. It's quite interesting. The adaxial, so that is going to be the surface of the plant, scientific name for the surface of the plant. And the adaxial is the underside of the leaf, backside, front side, I guess. All right, so back to what we were talking about, why soil bottom bins are bad. So a prominent way in the hobby right now to grow aquarium plants, not only Bucephanadra terrestrially, is in soil bottom bins. So they're like little plastic totes that have aqua soil at the bottom, and the plants are growing in them. It's a very common way to grow aquarium plants. However, it's not ideal because in those environments you're not able to exchange the soil, you're not able to clean the soil, and accumulations of cyanobacteria, mold, and a bunch of other ailments can grow a lot faster in that environment. Cyanobacteria is very easily grown in an environment where you can't change or clean. The lack of airflow can cause mold outbreaks if you don't have any airflow in there. And mold can take over a whole terrestrial bin in about 24 to 48 hours. It's not fun to deal with. All those plants you put your hard work into, they start getting susceptible to the mold and start melting. Of course, there are ways to mitigate these issues. However, would it be nice not to encounter those at all? So, one of the preferred ways to grow these plants terrestrially is going to be the immersed systems. A lesser known way to cultivate Bucephanadra and other aquarium plants is going to be an immersed system. This is a cleaner way to cultivate because you're able to clean the system without removing the soil. Having your plants planted in pots, so this helps not only with identification and cleanliness, it also helps you to rinse the pot. So if one pot gets attacked with cyanobacteria or mold, you're able to take that pot out of the tank, go to the sink, rinse it off, and put it back into the tank. So it makes it a lot easy to get rid of the eventual algae growth. And also, of course, growing in pots keeps things organized and properly identifiable. Sorry. All right, so we're going to go over a little simple way you can set up an immersed system at home. Some things you would need would be like a 10 to 20 gallon long aquarium, or any like Rubbermaid plastic bin that can be enclosed. A lid, of course, to cover the humidity if it's aquarium. A low grade LED. A substrate mix, and we'll go over the substrate mix shortly. Plant forceps, of course, and pots for planting. Something to note, if you do use like a sterilized bin or a Rubbermaid plastic bin, you do want to cut some air holes on the left and right hand side to ensure there's air circulation. Like we said before, if there's no air circulation, you're going to get a lot of illness in the bin, like mold, cyanobacteria, APC. All right, first we're going to go over substrate preparation. So something that's roots. We went over, ADA Amazonia. You can use that silica-based sand, pea gravel in your pots. But something that's little known about Bucephanadra is you can grow them in a pea gravel to make the root. I'm trying to think of the word. Trying to make the roots grow quicker. So if you have a plant growing in aqua soil, they have nutrients readily available to them, and they're able to put their roots out slowly. However, if you grow your plants in a basin of sand, silica sand, or pea gravel, there's not much nutrients in there for them to go after, so they're going to be sending their roots down a lot quicker than they would in an aqua soil. So you can get a larger root system if you grow them in a silica-based substrate. Something about that is there's no nutrients in the silica-based substrate. You need to add nutrients somehow. What I like to do is you can get a spray bottle and dilute some aquarium fertilizer in the spray bottle. I just do a few drops here and there, maybe like 1 or 2 milliliters to half a liter spray bottle. And you can spray the Bucephanadra in the setup, and that will adequately fertilize the plant. Another preferred way of preparing the substrate is going to rinse the aqua soil in the strainer. You want to make sure if you're using fresh aqua soil that you're rinsing it to get some of the ammonia out of there. I know it sounds counterintuitive because that ammonia is nutrient rich, but if there's too much ammonia in there, that can cause ammonia burns to the roots and deteriorate them at a faster rate. How I like to do it is I like to get a pot. I like to put not maybe ½ inch of aqua soil at the bottom of the pot, and I like to fill the rest with the silica and pea gravel mix. So that when you do plant your fresh plants in there, they're able to send their roots down a lot quicker because they don't have access to the amount of nutrients they would in a purely aqua soil pot. You would think they would grow a lot bigger and faster. You'd think they would grow a bigger root system that's faster growing in aqua soil, but they already have all the nutrients to them, so they're going to be growing a lot slower in comparison to nutrient absent environments. And superior because the plants are planted in, disregard that. Do you have any questions on the substrate preparation? And the beginning setup, of course. So you can begin by prepping your pot for planting. Try to get the pots that are 2.5 by 2.5 inch or whatever you have lying around. It doesn't have to be exact. The size really is an issue. However, you want to make sure the plants have enough room to spread their leaves. Leaves sitting on top of each other can cause deterioration if they don't have access to light. You can use moss or some other dense media to prevent the substrate from falling through the drainage holes of the pots. And then you want to fill with the substrate, place the pots in an orderly fashion, and actually plant the plants. You can see here I have some moss down here to prevent the substrate from falling through the pots. Alright, maintenance. So you're going to want to spray the foliage every 5 to 6 days. Like I said before, you can use a diluted nutrient solution to spray them. It's going to ensure the plants don't dry out. If Bucephanadra get too dry after being adapted to a high humidity environment, they will lose their leaves from going into that low humidity. So it's very important if you're wanting to lower the humidity on your bin or your terrarium that you do it slowly to ensure the plants don't go through shock of humidity levels. If your pots get attacked by algae, you can simply go into the sink and rinse thoroughly. If the plants get uprooted, you can just replant them. So it's really easy to get any type of outbreak under control if you see it. Next, we're going to go over probably my favorite part of the whole thing, which is pollination, dissection, and identification. So here's some important terms, and this is actually going to be a whole inflorescence of Bucephanadra. So the spadix. The spadix is going to be the spike of minute flowers closely arranged together. That is going to be the whole thing right here. The interstice staminodes. So the cool thing about interstice staminodes is that they're unique to Bucephanadra. A lot of the aeroids, almost all aeroids in the hobby, not only Bucephanadra, they lack the interstice staminodes between the male and female parts. And what these interstice staminodes do is they fall over the female parts once the pollen drops from the male parts, and it helps fertilize. It helps pollinate the female parts at the bottom. The spathe. The spathe is going to be the large petal. You see right here, I have in the corner. The large petal that covers the whole inflorescence. So usually with Bucephanadra flower, they kind of look like little calla lilies, and those modified spathes are what is covering the whole flower itself. The thece. So the thece is going to be the male parts right here, and you can see the little droplets right here on them. So most aeroids, most plants in general, they produce a pollen that is a powdery substance. However, what's unique to Bucephanadra is they produce a liquid pollen. It's not going to be the same as your standard your standard aeroids. Excuse me.
Thank you.
And yeah, of course, the inflorescence is a complete flower head, including stalk, stems, and flower. Something cool to note about the liquid pollen is there's only 1 or 2 varieties of insect on the island of Borneo that are able to pollinate with Bucephanadra. They're almost microscopic little beetles called Cultication. They're really cute, honestly. I wish I had a photo. Pollination. So you may be asking yourself, why don't we quickly pollinate Bucephanadra in the hobby to get more and grow from seed? That is because pollination itself is a challenge. They're unique to their own way that sets them apart from other aeroids like Anubias is the presence of the shield-shaped staminodes. Those are what we talked about before, the interstice staminodes. These are known as interstice staminodes. These staminodes play a role in trapping the pollen during anthesis. Anthesis simply means the opening of the flower, when the flower opens and it's ready to be pollinated. Pollen is only viable for a few hours after anthesis. So generally, for a lot of plants, pollen is viable for 12 to 10 hours, maybe a day or two. But with Bucephanadra particularly, it's only viable for a few hours, so it makes it quite hard and challenge to actually self-pollinate these plants. The reproductive parts are receptive around 6 hours after anthesis. There's a common misinformation that the interstice staminodes trap pollinators and kills them. However, this is not the case. The stem nodes have, when the stem nodes fall, it's recorded that there's no bugs present when they fall on the female parts. So there's a big misconception that these plants are killing bugs as they pollinate, which is not the case. And there's only a couple of pollinators that pollinate Bucephanadra, exclusively Cultication. And back to dissection and identification. In order to properly identify Bucephanadra, you have to look at the flower stalk. So there's so many different varieties of Bucephanadra that look the same. Some that have the same leaf shape, the same color, but once that inflorescence, the flower comes up, and you compare them to each other, they look completely different. So those are two different species. That's the case with a lot of the Bucephanadra we see in the trade, is they look the same, but then you get the flower up, and it looks completely different. So in order to properly identify these guys, you're going to want to cut the modified space, so the flower that's around the inflorescence, and that's going to expose the flower parts that we went over earlier. And with those flower parts, you would want to document the flower and compare it to other accepted species that are in the trade. There's about 32, 36 other species. And you compare the male, female parts and the interspiced gametodes to the accepted trade species. So after the comparison, you're able to narrow down what species these actually are. That being said, there's hundreds of different varieties of Bucephanadra. So there could be new species, or they could be within another species. You can use a clean, sterile blade to make an incision around the base of the spike, and you want to make sure not to decapitate the bud, and that'll expose all of the parts you need to actually identify the Bucephanadra. Next, this is going to be, we're going to talk about exploitation and extinction to prevent the inevitable. So, a lot of the farms, a lot of the distributors online, they import Bucephanadra directly from the island of Borneo, and these plants are quite literally taken straight from the wild and put into bags and shipped over here to the United States. People in Borneo are doing this because they need to make a living, they need to pay for their family, they need to pay for health bills, they need to pay for all these different things. So it's not really their fault for doing that. It's the demand in the hobby for these Bucephanadra plants because they're so pretty. So it's really important that we source our material from farm-raised tissue culture sources. I'm going to pull up a video here, and in this video, I think I can press play right here. In this video, not play. Oh my goodness. Well, if that video could play, you would see a guy running through the forest of Borneo with a plastic bag, ripping the Bucephanadra plants from nature. You can see right here, this is a good example, some bags here. And all of this growing on the wood and on the rock, that's Bucephanadra. And you may think, oh, that's probably like a year's worth of growth. This right here is actually probably 12 to 15 years of growth for the Bucephanadra. So imagine taking that, shipping it into the States, people are putting it in their tanks and killing it right away. That is the main cause for Bucephanadra to be going extinct in the wild. A lot of the species that we have in the trade are already extinct. And not only this, but also deforestation, of course, the moving of cities, the moving of capitals, palm tree plantations, all of these things contribute to the exploitation of Bucephanadra itself. I think the most important thing is to ask your seller where you're getting your plants from, if they're farm raised or if they are exported from the island of Borneo. I really wish I could show this video to you guys, but I want to take a few minutes at the end of this to answer questions you may have. But that is my presentation, cultivation over exploitation. Do I have any questions about anything in regards? Yes.
Can they be propagated?
Yeah, they could be propagated. How? Yeah.
We're bringing in the aquarium, how do we propagate?
Yes. So the cool thing about Bucephanadra is that it grows. It's a rhizomous plant, right? It grows from a rhizome, and on that rhizome there's nodes, and from the nodes new leaves form, right? And you can cut the plant on each node and that will form a whole new plant, and you're able to propagate it that way. Yes.
In what proportions would you use the ADA, silica sand,
Yeah.
and pig gravel?
Yes.
What's your proportion?
Well, so ideally you would want to do like a 1/2-inch layer of ADA on the bottom, so that would be ADA aqua soil by itself. Then you could do like 2 parts silica sand, 1 part gravel, or 2 parts silica sand, 2 part gravel. It's not necessarily, it doesn't really matter for the plant as long as it's inert substrate where there's no nutrients in there. Then it will send its roots down very quickly and access the aqua soil at the bottom.
So cap the.
Cap the soil, yes, but you do not want to do too much aqua soil because if there's no circulation or anything, like if there's no water circulation or there's no exchange, you can build up material in that aqua soil that can be harmful to the roots and cause them to melt.
Also,
Yes.
I'm kind of confused about how you use the turkey baster.
Yeah.
If you're siphoning, do you have the turkey baster on another tube?
No, that's a great question. So it's a little hack I learned. So you have your siphon tube, right? Just the tube itself, not even the plastic siphon part. You take your turkey baster and you're actually going to use like 3 or 4 rubber bands and you're going to rubber band it to the end of the siphon that's actually going in the aquarium. So you can use the ball, the squeezer, to guide the siphon and you're going to be squeezing it, pushing the detritus while it's sucking it in at the same time.
It's on the side of the tube.
Yes, it's on the side of the tube, and that's going to get all of the detritus out of there. Detritus buildup is one of the primary things that causes melt in the aquarium. All right. Yes.
So about the wild collection thing,
Yes.
it's a tricky issue because I know for fishes in the Amazon,
Yeah.
There is a Project Piata,
Yeah.
which encourages you to buy fishes from the forest, and I've actually been where they do it.
Mhm.
The idea being that if they can sell the fishes,
Yeah.
they don't cut the mahogany.
Yeah.
And so I guess it comes down to if the use can be harvested lightly,
Yeah.
then there's no reason to sell the rest of the place.
Yes.
Is there any dialogue about like maybe light harvesting or protecting or?
Yeah. So I mean that goes to the farmers themselves and the people that are actually in Borneo doing the collecting. So, for example, the person that I import Bucephanadra from, he's been doing it since like 2008, 2009. He sustainably harvests the plants. He barely collects any of them, and he has lineages of plants that are like 15, 16 years old that have been propagated over and over again. So it's a very thin line between propagating them on the island themselves and just taking them from the wild to make a quick buck. And I don't want to say make a quick buck either, because a lot of the times these people are doing it to sustain themselves, sustain their families, and help put food on the table. So it is it's a hard topic to discuss for sure, but it does lead the way back around to wanting to promote farm-raised customers, if that makes sense. Yeah. All right. Do I have any other questions on anything? All right. Yes.
What about the lighting? How much light?
That's a great question. So a lot of the times, Bucephanadra doesn't really like to be grown in crazy high light. It can inhibit their growth because algae can grow on them a lot quicker. Any algae growing on the surface of the leaf is going to inhibit the growth of the plant in general. So if you grow them in lower light settings, medium light settings, you're going to see the best growth out of them. Unless you're growing them, of course, in a high-tech plant CO2 tank where everything's perfect, then it's going to grow pretty nicely. But not everyone has that. So if you want to grow your Bucephanadra a lot easier in the tank, I suggest doing it in a lower to medium light setting. Even have it shaded by other plants. It'll grow very nicely.
What about the length?
The length, I mean, that doesn't necessarily matter. If you have like one spotlight, you're going to have little darker patches on the corners of your aquarium, and that'd be fine to plant your plants there. But if you also have a strip light, as long as it's not insanely highlighting in combination with, not enough water changing or whatever the case may be, you'll have good growth. So the most important thing, it rounds back to the husbandry of the aquarium. Yeah. Yes.
What would you recommend as other plants to grow in for a little bit more, like fish species?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, it's pretty versatile what you can do with it. If it were me setting up a Bucephanadra specific tank, I do like low, medium, light. I would complement the Bucephanadra with like cryptocorns, anubias, any other slower growing plants that can grow in that environment. That being said, a lot of the plants that we have in the hobby that are considered high light plants can still be grown in a low to medium light setting if the conditions allow it to. So if you're doing the proper water changing, if there's aqua soil opposed to gravel, all of these things are factors if the plants are going to grow in the tank. Does that make sense? Yeah.
What about the fish?
Yeah. Oh, fish. So it depends. Like so you don't want to do like tetras that munch on plant leaves and things like that. So I have a good example of that actually. So at home I have a big 114-gallon tank, and it has a lot of Bucephanadra in it, and I had some scratched impay tetras in there. And when they're smaller, they're leaving the plants alone, but as they grew bigger, they started eating the new leaves of my plants, and ain't nothing touching my boots, so I'm gonna take those fish out of there. So it's really important that you don't want to put any plant-eating fish in there. I mean, not all tetras are plant-eating. Like you can do like Hyphesibrygon species, any of those guys will be fine. Parachirodon, like neon tetras, cardinal tetras, those would be good. I would suggest like Asiatic species like Rasboras, Danios, different things that come from the same area that they do. Yeah. Yeah.
What duration of lighting? What would be
Yeah.
the time, the day?
Yeah, so I always recommend anywhere from 6 to 8 hours of lighting. I know 6 hours, what the heck, you're not going to see your tank. Ideally, you'd have it on when you're home. So for me, personally, I have it on from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. so I can enjoy it when I'm at home. But the longer the photo period you have, the more access the algae has to grow in the aquarium, especially if you're not dosing fertilizer and doing the proper water changes to combat the algae growth. So something that causes a lot of the algae in the aquarium is, having a long photo period, dosing fertilizer like once every other week, and doing a water change like every 2 to 3 weeks. You're gonna have plants that are sitting there, not really growing, not really dying, but just, sitting there. But you can have like a nice 8 to 10 hour long photo period if you're doing the weekly water change and fertilizing the tank properly. So if you have a medium to heavy plant load, I recommend fertilizing your tank possibly 4, maybe 5 times a week. Sometimes every day of the week if you have CO2 injection in there alongside a weekly water change. So if you're dosing fertilizer once every other week, the algae is going to uptake that fertilizer a lot quicker than the plants do. It's a battle between the plants and the algae for the nutrients available in the water column. So if you're only adding nutrients once a week, the algae is going to uptake it a lot quicker than the plants do. The plants are going to get covered with algae, and it's going to inhibit them from taking up the nutrients you add and just aid to the algae growth. If that makes sense. We have any other plant questions or algae questions? Anything at all? All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I have this picture here. I just want to say this is my favorite freaking Bucephanadra species. You don't even see the leaves. I only like it because of the flower. If you look, you can see it has these little horns right here. This is known as Bucephanadra diabolica. It was named Bucephanadra diabolica because it has these little devil horns on its flower, and it's red, so that's cool. Yeah, that's in metric. Yes. So it's very tiny. It's a small flower. But yeah, I would also like to add, I did bring some farm-raised specimens of Bucephanadra here. Their lineage is years upon years, so they're not taken from the wild. They're available at the auction table. They were donated, and a few little terrestrial plants. Yes.
What fish do you find each hair algae?
Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of fish that eat hair algae. It depends on the tank setup and the fish that you have. However, I like the reticulated Siamese algae eater, the Crossachilus reticulatus. Those are really good at eating hair algae, but they get quite big, so you wouldn't want to put them in like, 15 to 20 gallon tank. But in a smaller aquarium, you could do like, well, it depends. Otocinclus are really good at eating hair algae and black-bearded algae, but that's only if the algae is like dying or actively dying in the tank. They can eat the algae, but they're not going to keep up with it. But if the algae is dying, that's like fresh food for them. So if you kill the algae with, say, like hydrogen peroxide or algae fix and some other algae inhibitor, the otos and the plecos will go after it more readily. But what I found as the best hair algae eaters is Siamese algae eaters across the chylus, and they do get big, and they can turn into assholes when they're big. Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, they can be mean. But for general algae, like diatomaceous, the brown cotton candy algae, the stuff that grows on the glass, your bristlenose plecos, your otocinclus, nearite snails are really good at it, but they leave little white eggs everywhere. But that's what I would recommend for algae eating. Yeah.
Do any other snails eat the algae?
People try to say mystery snails do, but they're kind of lazy, I think. They kind of eat the food more than they do the algae. The nearite snails are going to be the best variety. Probably the horned nearite snails are really good at eating algae. See, of course. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks once again, Jebriel, for a great talk. He is going to be hanging out with us while we do the auction, so feel free to come up to him and chat if you'd like to. He didn't really talk about it much today, but he does work for the Wet Spot. He's quite knowledgeable about fish, so if you have fish-related questions, feel free to also. If he gets annoyed and tells you to go away, please respect it. He probably won't, but we're gonna take 15, 20 minutes, some amount of time, so that you guys can pick out those items on the tables. We're gonna turn those lights back on, and if you are Daniel Waterman or Jennifer Hayworth, please see.
I have Jennifer sneak in.
If you are Daniel Waterman, please see Donna over by the window. Get your raffle tickets. Anyone else want to yell some announcements at me?
Stop the abuse.
Look at the views of the fish.
For me?
No, for him.
So